So there I was, minding my own business, hauling a shipment of what I'd been told was totally legal Earth whiskey across the Andromeda trade route, when my day got significantly worse. A patrol cruiser, all sleek chrome and pulsing lights that screamed, "We take ourselves way too seriously," pulled me over like I'd been doing 60 in a school zone. The boarding party consisted of 3 aliens who looked like someone had given office supplies anxiety disorders and let them evolve for 1,000,000 years. The lead officer, who introduced himself as Administrator Veltok, had skin like purple leather and eyes that blinked sideways. Creepy, but I've seen worse at truck stops back on Earth. "Jack Torres of Earth," Veltok announced, reading from a datapad with all the enthusiasm of a DMV employee on a Monday morning. "You have been selected for species evaluation by the Galactic Compliance Bureau." "Selected?" I said, leaning against my cargo hold. "That's a funny way of saying kidnapped, but sure, let's go with that." Veltok's face did something that might have been a frown or possibly indigestion. Hard to tell with aliens. "Your species has been flagged for assessment. All species must undergo the proving before full admission to the galactic community." The proving. Sounds ominous. Is there paperwork involved, or do I just fight someone? "Combat assessment," Veltok confirmed, like this was completely normal. "Every species possesses natural weapons. Claws, venom, telepathic abilities, acidic secretions, electromagnetic pulses. The proving determines your species' threat level and assigns an appropriate tier in the galactic hierarchy." I looked down at my very human hands. Hands that were great for holding beer and terrible for literally anything Veltok had just listed. Natural weapons. Right. And what exactly do humans have? Veltok consulted his datapad, then frowned harder. "The system is having difficulty with your scan. It keeps indicating you are unarmed." "I mean, I've got 2 arms right here," I said, waving them around. "Pretty sure they're attached and everything. Not unarmed in that sense," Veltok said with the patience of someone explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "The system indicates your species possesses no biological weapons. No claws, no venom, no natural defenses whatsoever. We've got our winning personalities." Veltok ignored that. "You will enter the arena tomorrow. The system will assess your capabilities against standard opponents. Should you survive, Earth will be granted provisional membership and assigned a tier. Should you not survive, well, Earth will be quarantined as a non-viable species." "No pressure then," I muttered. They threw me in a holding cell that was probably luxurious by alien standards, but felt like a hotel room designed by someone who'd only heard hotels described secondhand. The bed was too short, the gravity was slightly off, and the toilet situation was something I'm still trying to forget. I spent the night wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. The other species had claws and venom and probably laser eyes or whatever. I had a smart mouth and a really good throwing arm from my high school baseball days. This was going to go great. The next morning, Veltok collected me with all the warmth of a parking enforcement officer. "The arena awaits, human. Try not to die too quickly. The spectators paid good credits for this." "There are spectators. The proving is the galaxy's most watched sporting event." Of course it was. Humans were about to get evaluated for galactic membership on what was essentially cosmic pay-per-view. No way this could possibly go wrong. As they marched me toward the arena, I could hear the crowd already. Thousands of aliens, all gathered to watch some hapless human get torn apart by something with more teeth than sense. The system's voice echoed through the corridor, cold and artificial. "Contestant identified. Species. Human. Scanning for natural weapons." A pause. Error. Unable to detect biological weapons. Rescanning. Another pause. Classification. Unarmed. The crowd laughed. Actual laughter. Across species barriers, apparently mockery was universal. I cracked my knuckles and stepped into the arena. "All right then, let's get this over with." The arena was exactly what you'd expect if the Romans had access to force fields and zero workplace safety regulations. A circular dirt floor, maybe 50 meters across, surrounded by shimmering energy barriers, and about 10,000 aliens in the stands, all of them looking like they'd just bet their life savings against me. My opponent was already waiting in the center, and let me tell you, he did not skip leg day. or any day. Scar, as the system helpfully announced, stood about 7 feet tall with muscles on muscles, covered in scales that looked like they could stop a bullet. His hands ended in retractable claws that gleamed under the arena lights, and his smile showed off teeth that could have doubled as steak knives. "Human," Scar growled, his voice like gravel in a blender. "I will make this quick." "Wow, thanks. That's actually really considerate," I said. "Most people don't even offer." The system's voice boomed across the arena. Match parameters initialized. Contestant 1, Scar of Draken Prime. Natural weapons, retractable claws, reinforced skeletal structure, enhanced strength, accelerated healing factor, armored epidermis. The crowd cheered. Scar flexed, because apparently even alien murder lizards can't resist playing to an audience. Contestant 2, Jack Torres of Earth. Natural weapons scanning. Here we go. Scanning. Please wait. The crowd leaned forward. Error. No biological weapons detected. Rescanning. Scar looked confused. What manner of creature has no weapons? The kind that's about to ruin your day, I said with way more confidence than I felt. Scan complete. Classification, unarmed. Assessment, Tier 5 physical threat. Probability of survival, 8%. 8%? I shouted at the sky. That's generous. The system continued, oblivious to my crisis. Match begins in 3, 2, 1. Scar lunged, claws extended, moving faster than something his size had any right to move. I did what any reasonable human would do. I dove sideways and rolled, coming up in a crouch about 5 meters away. The crowd booed. "Stand and fight, coward," Scar roared. "Yeah, that's not really the human way," I called back, circling. "We're more into the whole survival thing." He charged again, and again I dodged, this time barely. His claws scraped my jacket, tearing through the fabric like tissue paper. 3 inches closer, and that would have been my spine. The crowd was getting restless, probably annoyed their gladiator match was turning into a track and field event. But here's the thing about fighting something bigger and stronger than you. You don't win by being bigger or stronger. You win by being annoying. Scar came at me a third time, and instead of dodging away, I dodged toward him, ducking under his swing and driving my shoulder into his knee. Not hard enough to hurt him through those scales, but enough to throw off his balance. He stumbled, just a bit, and I used that second to grab a handful of arena dirt and fling it directly into his eyes. "Gah! Dishonorable!" Scar bellowed, clawing at his face. "Effective, though," I shot back, already moving. The system's voice cut in, sounding genuinely confused. "Analysis. Human has weaponized environmental particulates. Recategorizing threat assessment." I kept moving, kept talking, because if there's one thing humans are really good at, it's being irritating. "You know what your problem is, Scar? You fight with honor. Honor's great and all, but it doesn't mean much when you're dead." He cleared his eyes and came at me with renewed fury, all strategy abandoned in favor of just tearing me apart, which, to be fair, was probably still his best option. But angry opponents make mistakes, and I was counting on that. Scar overextended on a swipe, and I managed to grab his arm, using his own momentum to redirect him face first into the arena wall. The energy barrier flashed on impact, and Scar staggered back, dazed. The crowd went silent. Even Veltok in his administrator's box looked stunned. I backed away, breathing hard, every muscle screaming. "Round 1 to the unarmed human. Anyone else want to recalculate those survival odds?" They didn't give me much time to recover, which seemed rude considering I'd just survived the encounter with Discount Godzilla. The arena floor shifted, sections rising and falling to create an obstacle course of platforms and barriers. Apparently the proving had a round 2, and nobody had bothered to mention that part. My next opponent descended from above on what I can only describe as a teleportation platform, because of course aliens had those. Catherine was her name, and she looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, scaled it up to human size, added 2 extra arms, and given it a really smug expression. "A human," Catherine said, her voice surprisingly melodic for someone with mandibles. "How quaint. I have analyzed 17 hours of your species combat footage. Your tactics are predictable. Your physical capabilities limited. Your—" "Do you ever shut up?" I interrupted because I was tired, bleeding from a dozen scratches and not in the mood for a TED Talk from a giant bug. Catherine's antennae twitched. Rude. The system has indicated you possess no venom, yet your words are toxic. Lady, you have no idea. The system announced round 2. Catherine's natural weapons included paralyzing venom, compound eyes with near 360-degree vision, enhanced reflexes, and an exoskeleton that could apparently stop small arms fire. My natural weapons remained stubbornly non-existent according to the scan. Match begins in 3, 2, 1. Catherine didn't charge like Scar had. She moved with calculated precision, her forearms spread wide, herding me toward a corner of the arena. Smart, methodical, absolutely convinced of her superiority, which was really starting to become a theme with these aliens. I feinted left, then dove right, rolling behind one of the raised platforms. Catherine pursued without hesitation, which was her first mistake. Her second mistake was assuming humans only fight with our fists. I'd lost my jacket in the first round, but I still had my belt, my boots, and a really good throwing arm. The belt came off first, and I whipped it at Catherine's compound eyes. She blocked with one arm, exactly as I'd expected, which meant she didn't see me throw my boot with the other hand. It caught her square in what I hoped was her face. She staggered back, mandibles clicking in fury. Analyzing attack pattern, the system intoned. Weapon detected, footwear. Classification unclear. Recalculating threat assessment. Everything's a weapon if you're creative enough, I muttered, already unlacing my second boot. Catherine recovered quickly, her venom dripping from her mandibles as she closed in. I managed to dodge the first strike, but the second caught my arm, her claw raking across my bicep. The wound burned immediately, her venom going to work. My arm went numb from elbow to fingertips. The crowd was on their feet now, all of them shouting in whatever languages they spoke. Some were cheering for Catherine. A few, I noticed, were cheering for me. Apparently, the underdog story played well even in space. My left arm was useless, the venom spreading. Catherine knew it too, circling for the kill. But here's something about humans that aliens clearly hadn't figured out yet. We're spiteful, especially when we're losing. I reached down with my good hand and scooped up a handful of dirt and my own blood from where Catherine had cut me. Before she could react, I flung it directly into her compound eyes. Insect eyes, it turns out, don't handle foreign contamination well. Catherine shrieked, all four arms going to her face, her careful strategy abandoned. I didn't wait for an invitation. I charged in, using my good arm and both legs to take her down in what my high school wrestling coach would have been proud of. We hit the ground hard, and I used my weight to pin her, my knee on what I hoped was something important. "Yield," I gasped. "Just yield and we both walk away." Catherine thrashed once more, then went still. "I yield. You fight without honor, without dignity, without any recognizable combat form." "Yeah, but I win," I said, rolling off her. The system's voice had taken on an almost frantic quality. "Analyzing combat data. Human has utilized environmental weapons, manufactured items, biological fluids, psychological warfare, and improvised grappling techniques. Threat classification. Recalculating. Unable to establish standard parameters." I lay on my back in the dirt, my left arm still numb, my entire body one giant bruise, and laughed. Actually laughed. "That's right," I called up to the system. "Recalculate that." They hauled me out of the arena to what I can only describe as an alien medical bay, where a slug-like creature poked at my wounds with instruments that looked disturbingly medieval. My arm was regaining feeling, which meant Catherine's venom wasn't permanent, which was nice. I'd have hated to explain to my insurance company back home that I'd lost arm functionality to a giant space mantis. Meanwhile, up in the observation room, Administrator Veltok was having what humans would call a Category 5 meltdown. I know this because they'd left the intercom on, and I could hear every word of the panic-driven debate happening above. "The system has flagged humans as a potential hazard," Veltok was saying, his voice about 3 octaves higher than usual. Not because of physical capabilities, but due to complete unpredictability and unauthorized weaponization of arena equipment, environmental features, and their own bodily fluids. "Fascinating," another voice responded, slow and monotone. That would be Counselor Breenax, the slug creature who'd been treating me. Protocol 777A clearly states that improvised weapons are permissible within proving parameters. They weaponized dirt, Veltok shrieked. The regulations do not specify which materials may or may not be weaponized. A third voice cut in, gravelly and hard. I've seen that look before. That's not innovation, that's survival instinct. The humans operating on pure spite and refusal to die. That was General Thrax, a scarred veteran who looked like he'd been through several wars and enjoyed none of them. Pull up their species history. I want to see what we're dealing with. There was a pause, then Veltok's voice again, quieter now. System, display human conflict history. I couldn't see what they were watching, but I could imagine. Humans hitting each other with rocks, then bronze, then steel. The development of gunpowder, automatic weapons, chemical warfare, nuclear bombs. Thousands of years of us figuring out new and creative ways to kill each other. They split the atom, General Thrax said slowly. They looked at the fundamental building block of matter and thought, I wonder if we can make this explode. And then they did it. Twice. On themselves. This is exactly why we need to quarantine Earth immediately, Veltok insisted. They're dangerous. They're tool users, Thrax countered. Every piece of footage shows the same pattern. Humans don't have built-in weapons because they're too busy building external ones. They adapt. They improvise. They overcome. That's not a species trait. That's a horror movie, Veltok said. Counselor Breenax interjected with characteristic monotone. Regardless of personal feelings, protocol requires completion of the proving. The human has survived 2 rounds. Per regulations established in Treaty 445B subsection 12, he has earned the right to the final challenge should any champion choose to invoke it. No one's going to invoke it, Veltok said. The champions have pride, not death wishes. That's when the fourth voice spoke up, deep and resonant, echoing through the observation room like thunder. I invoke the right of challenge. Even through the intercom I could feel the temperature drop. Drachnos, General Thrax said quietly. You don't have to do this. The human has made mockery of the proving, Drachnos replied. He has dishonored combat itself with his tactics. I will restore dignity to this arena. Down in the medical bay, I groaned. Please tell me Drachnos is a small, manageable opponent who fights fair and gives bathroom breaks. Counselor Breenax turned one eye stalk toward me. Drachnos the Unkillable is the arena's reigning champion across 73 weight classes. He has never lost a match in 412 attempts. He possesses 4 arms, bioluminescent war markings, redundant cardiovascular systems, and a documented kill count of approximately 6,000. So that's a no on the bathroom breaks. Additionally, Breenax continued, champion challenges are traditionally conducted to the death. I stared at the ceiling. Of course they are. They gave me an hour to prepare, which I spent doing absolutely nothing useful. What was I supposed to do? Train? Study Drachnos' fighting style? I was running on adrenaline, spite, and whatever questionable pain medication Counselor Breenax had injected into my arm. Preparation seemed optimistic at this point. When they marched me back into the arena, the crowd had somehow grown even larger. Apparently word had spread that a human was about to get murdered by the legendary champion, and nobody wanted to miss the show. Great. My death was trending on space Twitter. Drachnos stood in the center of the arena, and I immediately understood why they called him unkillable. He was massive, easily 9 feet tall, with 4 arms that ended in hands the size of dinner plates. His skin was covered in glowing bioluminescent markings that pulsed with each breath, and his eyes, all 6 of them, tracked my every movement with predatory focus. Human, Drachnos said, his voice surprisingly calm. You have survived through dishonor and mockery. You have turned the proving into comedy. This ends now. Look, Drac, I said, because if I was going to die, I was going to die being annoying. I'm just trying to pass your test with the tools I've got. It's not my fault you guys have unrealistic expectations about biological weapons. You fight without dignity. I fight to win. There's a difference. The system's voice boomed overhead. Champion challenge initiated. Drachnos the Unkillable versus Jack Torres of Earth. Combat continues until one contestant yields or expires. Match begins in 3, 2, 1. Drachnos moved, and I finally understood what 412 undefeated matches looked like in physical form. He didn't charge. He flowed, all four arms working in concert, creating a web of attacks that left no opening, no escape route. I backpedaled, blocked with my forearm. Bad idea, felt like blocking a sledgehammer, and barely ducked under a follow-up strike that would have taken my head off. Drachnos wasn't just strong and fast. He was skilled. He'd studied combat like it was an art form, and I was fighting a grandmaster with crayons and determination. One of his hands caught my shoulder, and I felt bones creak under the pressure. He lifted me off the ground one-handed, his other three arms positioning for what would definitely be a lethal combination of strikes. Then I did something that surprised both of us. I bit his wrist, hard. Drachnos's eyes widened in shock, all six of them, and he dropped me. I hit the ground rolling, putting distance between us, my mouth tasting like copper and regret. "Did you just—" Drachnos stared at his wrist where I'd left teeth marks. "You bit me?" "You're right, super undignified," I gasped. "Probably should have asked permission first." The system's voice had officially given up on neutrality. Analysis: human-employed dental weapons. Correction: human teeth are not classified as weapons grade. Correction: effectiveness irrelevant to classification. Recalculating entire species assessment database. Drachnos's bioluminescent markings flared brighter, his calm demeanor cracking. "You are not a warrior. You are a pest." "Yeah, but I'm a persistent pest." He came at me again, faster now, honor abandoned in favor of just ending this fight, which honestly, I couldn't blame him for. But Drachnos had made one critical error. He was angry. Angry opponents make mistakes, and I was betting everything on him making one big enough for me to survive. We traded blows. Well, he threw blows and I frantically dodged while occasionally getting in lucky shots that probably hurt my hands more than his face. The arena became a blur of movement, pain, and increasingly creative cursing in multiple languages. Then I noticed something. Drachnos was breathing harder. Not much, but enough. His movements were still precise, still deadly, but fractionally slower than they'd been at the start. He was getting tired. I, despite looking like I'd gone 10 rounds with a meat grinder, was still moving, still dodging, still refusing to die. Because here's the thing about humans that the galaxy apparently hadn't figured out. We're endurance hunters. We don't have claws or venom or armor. We don't need them. We just keep going, and going, and going. Long after any reasonable species would have collapsed, humans just keep moving, because millions of years ago our ancestors figured out they could chase prey until it died of exhaustion. So I ran. And Drachnos, bound by pride and combat doctrine, chased. The system's announcement echoed across the arena. Human tactic detected. Classification: strategic retreat. Correction: full retreat. Correction: cowardice. Recalculating. I kept running, kept moving, and slowly, incrementally, Drachnos the Unkillable began to slow. 20 minutes later, which felt like approximately 70 years, Drachnos stopped chasing. He stood in the center of the arena, all four arms hanging at his sides, his bioluminescent markings dim, his breathing labored. He wasn't injured. He was just exhausted. I stopped running about 15 meters away, bent over with my hands on my knees, pretty sure I was going to throw up, pass out, or both. Every part of my body hurt. But I was still standing. "What are you?" Drachnos wheezed. "You should be dead. Multiple times dead." "I'm human," I managed between breaths. "We're too stupid to know when to quit." The crowd had gone completely silent. 10,000 aliens watching a human and a champion just standing there, neither attacking, both too exhausted to continue. Then I did possibly the dumbest thing I'd done all day, which was saying something. I attacked. I charged while Drachnos was still recovering, drove my shoulder into his midsection, which felt like tackling a brick wall, and we both went down. On the ground, his forearms were less of an advantage. I got one arm in what I think was a joint lock, used my elbow on what I hoped was a nerve cluster, and applied pressure until Drachnos tapped the ground with one of his free hands. "Yield," he gasped. "You win, human. You win." I rolled off him, lay flat on my back staring at the arena ceiling, and started laughing. Delirious, exhausted, probably concussed laughing. The system's voice cut through the silence, and for the first time it actually sounded uncertain. Match concluded. Victor. Jack Torres of Earth. Species assessment. Critical review required. Initiating emergency council session. Up in the observation room, absolute chaos had erupted. Veltok was shouting about protocols, Breenax was citing regulations nobody cared about, and General Thrax was watching the replay footage with an expression that might have been respect or horror, possibly both. The system's main interface flickered as it processed data. Analysis of human combat performance reveals the following. Subject lacks all conventional biological weapons. Subject compensates through environmental exploitation, tool improvisation, psychological warfare, endurance-based tactics, and complete disregard for established combat conventions. So what's the classification? Veltok demanded. What tier do we assign them? The system paused. Processing. Physical capability. Tier 5. No natural weapons detected. However, tactical unpredictability and environmental adaptation create an effective threat assessment of Tier 2 minimum. Recommendation: humans should be classified as unarmed but dangerous. That's not a real classification, Veltok protested. It is now, General Thrax said, still watching the replay. The human won 3 matches against superior opponents using nothing but spite and creativity. That's not a fluke. That's a species trait. Down in the arena, they'd finally sent medics to collect me. I was pretty sure I had at least 4 broken ribs, a concussion, and injuries that didn't even have names yet. But I was alive, which was significantly better than the alternative. Counselor Breenax's voice came through a nearby speaker. Jack Torres of Earth, you have completed the proving. Your species has been granted conditional membership in the galactic community. Conditional? I croaked. Earth is granted full trade and diplomatic rights, Breenax continued. However, humans are hereby banned from military service across 17 member systems due to unpredictable combat methodology and concerning disregard for conventional warfare ethics. We're too dangerous for the space military? I laughed, which hurt. That's the best thing I've heard all week. Veltok appeared at the arena entrance, looking like he'd aged about 10 years in the last few hours. You're free to go, Torres. Take your whiskey, take your ship, and please, for the sake of galactic stability, try not to get into any more fights. Can't promise that, I said, letting the medics help me to my feet, but I'll do my best. As I limped toward the exit, the system's voice echoed one final time across the arena, updating Earth's official galactic record for all to hear. Species, human. Classification, unarmed. Threat assessment, do not engage in prolonged conflict. Humans lack biological weapons, but compensate through tool use, environmental manipulation, psychological warfare, and concerning persistence. They will find a way. They always find a way. 3 days later, I was back in my ship, bruises fading thanks to alien medicine that was way better than anything we had back home, heading toward Earth with a story nobody would believe. The whiskey was still in my cargo hold, somehow even more illegal now that I was an official galactic incident. I cracked open a bottle, took a sip, and smiled at the stars through my viewport. Unarmed, I muttered. Yeah, right. Behind me, my communication console blinked with an incoming message. It was from General Thrax. Torres, if you ever decide you want a job that pays better than whiskey smuggling, the Galactic Defense Force has a position in strategic planning. We could use someone who thinks like you. Consider it an offer. I deleted the message and took another sip. Some weapons, I figured, were better left unclassified.